Alright, well, here we are. We are at the main menu of the Cyber Gadget Retro Freak. So welcome to the slightly overdue follow-up video. I apologize if I sound a little bit more weird than I normally do. Honestly, I'm sick right now, but not enough where I can't talk for a while. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some of the games I already have installed. I'm going to show you the installation process itself to show you how long or short a game dumping process can be, and we're just going to fly through the menus. I'm going to show off a couple translation patches, a couple things here. We're going to start simple. I'm going to put in Nutopia for the TurboGrafx 16, because this is one of the smallest games that you would plug into the system in terms of dumping. And just like that, it's ready. It prompts you to install. You can select yes, and it has been installed. And there you go. Now, I'm going to plug in Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories for the Game Boy Advance. This is the one Game Boy Advance game I own that I know is 32 megabytes in size. 32 megabytes is the largest size ROM you would plug into this system, period. So this is the longest that a game should take to dump. Again, that is pretty much exclusive to the Game Boy Advance. The Genesis, the largest ROM sizes are somewhere around 4 megabytes. 8 megabytes for Pure Solar, but I don't know if the system recognizes Pure Solar properly. I do own it, I just haven't bothered plugging it in. I could actually reach over and grab it wherever I put it in the room. And then there is the matter of... See, Game Boy, I think the largest is like 2 megabytes. NES, the largest you're going to see is probably 2 megabytes. And even then, a lot of those 2 megabyte games are bootlegs that don't dump properly because, simply put, NES cartridges are very complex. It's very hard to do 100% support when trying to dump the entire ROM at once, because you need to know exactly how the cartridge works. And some of them are not so easily reverse engineered. And that's done being dumped. And then, like Mark III, I don't think you're going to get even close to 1 megabyte, or Master System, for those of you in the non-Japanese region. And we're going to install it, and it just quickly copies the game to the SD card, with one awkward pause in the progress bar there. And let me think for a minute. Super Nintendo, it's going to be a few megabytes. I think Star Ocean will dump at 6 megabytes initially, but it'll decompress to 12 thanks to the chip inside of it. That sort of thing. Alright, so I'm going to take that out. And we're just going to go over the menu quickly. Once... I don't know how that happened. My controller cord got, like, under the system. Anyways, under here in controllers, you can do the controller to player mapping, where you choose which controller is mapped to who. You can do the button mapping, where you can do individual stuff based on the standard controllers, the third-party adapter that comes with it, PlayStation controllers, or the other USB option, which down here, if you select other USB, you can see my profile for my Saturn to USB adapter here, and you can go in and remap everything individually. We're going to set that back to Retro Freak Standard, though. Manage profiles, so you can see don't really have much. I haven't sat down and really gone crazy with this system, thanks to the English class I just finished. Oh boy, it was crazy. Under hotkey configuration, you can change how the buttons work. By default, on the Retro Freak controller, the option button pressed in conjunction with specific buttons will let you do certain things, such as loading and saving states. The disk side thing, I haven't even looked into that. I think that's just there for the sake of support, more than anything else. I do have a disk system, but it's not going to work with this. And then you have fast forward and turbo fire options there. Under AV settings, you have all sorts of filters, which it does the nice thing and shows you a little example on the side there with all the different filters. You can do the aspect ratio changes that are necessary. You can turn on scan lines. You can even apply them in the main menu. I will not play with scan lines. They actually make me physically sick. I can't use CRTs anymore because they make me sick, and it's like a placebo effect for me. You can display the overscan or turn it off in certain game systems that have that support. You can force original resolutions, all sorts of things. I accidentally turned that on. There is the audio, the sound enhancement, bass boost, treble boost, the sound effects. I'm going to turn these off because I bet you guys are getting tired of hearing them right now. You can adjust the volume in the system as well. And one moment. Hopefully accidentally switching on full range didn't fuck everything up. Anyways, we're going to show off some of the installed games. We're going to start under Famicom here. I installed my copy of Mech Fight, which I will show you. This is one of the few NES games I've beaten. We can go into the multiplayer mode, and you can see I've unlocked everybody, including these guys, which involves beating on the highest difficulty to get them. And we'll do just a quick little round here, me versus Sukapon. This is where input lag would be noticeable for me, because this is one of those games where I have ridiculous muscle memory. It's like one of the only fighting games I'm good at, probably the one that I'm good at. Well, I say that, and then I get assaulted by this guy throwing his head. There we go. It's an interesting little fighting game. It was made by Nintendo. I hope to cover games like this in the future with a separate series. Just kind of a quick little, hey, this game exists, this is some stuff about it, this is some gameplay footage kind of thing. I will probably use real hardware for that, though, rather than the Retro Freak. The only case where I won't use real hardware is if I cover a Virtual Boy game for some reason, or at the moment I have to do it for Wonder Swan or Neo Geo games because there's no capture method for those. Game Gear games, I just need to get a mod for my Game Gear and install it, and it's just a matter of the mod's kind of expensive, which is why I don't own it right now. Also, it's a bit of an involved process, so it'll just take me a while to do it. But this is a fun little game. I mean, there's 36 different characters, and only 8 of them are clones. And I mean, for an NES game, clone characters are forgivable. It's also one of the hardest games I've ever beaten. I'd say the hardest game I've ever beaten was that Transformers game on the Famicom. I'd put that in and show that, but I don't feel like ripping my own stomach out right now. The only time I've ever thrown a controller is because of that game, and I just don't throw controllers, like, ever. That's just not my habit. Now, just very quickly, I'm going to show something off with this game. The translation patch settings. I have the patch for it right in here. And we'll do that. And look at that. We'll go into one of the tutorials here, because that will actually show some text. And you can see what I was doing. It is Fireball. This is one thing I do really like about this game, is this tutorial mode. It shows you all these nice, like, diagrams and gives you a chance to mess around and figure things out. It doesn't tell you everything, because if you do the combo but with B, you do like this sharp upwards one. I just rarely use it. So that is Mech Fight on the Famicom. We will go back to the main menu, over to Super Famicom. I'm going to show Star Fox quickly because some people want to see Super FX games going. And I mean, they work alright. Again, this thing dumps the ROM and runs it internally on the system, so all it needs to do is properly emulate a Super FX chip. It doesn't actually need to work with the expansion chips themselves. And honestly, it would be kind of silly to do that because I can imagine coding to work a software emulator with a hardware chip like that might actually be worse than just trying to imitate the chip itself. Not to mention it would make the whole installation function just completely invalid for games that required these. And I can show you how much I suck at this version of Star Fox, because I grew up with the Nintendo 64 version. And I mean, yeah, you can see that this works quite well. Actually, not doing as badly as I did the other night when I quickly tested this. Of course I hit bomb instead of break. Anyways, let's get out of that game before I look even worse. We'll go back into Super Famicom for a second. We're going to show off Shin Megami Tensei here. Again, another game with a translation patch. I might as well. So by default, the game's going to be in Japanese and we're not going to know what we're doing. Creepy, like dream tunnel sequence. So yeah, don't know what's going on. So we go back to the main menu. And we're going to load up the patch. I do have a lot more games than what are installed right now. I just haven't taken the time to sit down and install the ones I want to. I'm not going to install everything I own, just like some games, specific ones that I play a lot and wouldn't mind having on a teeny little micro console. Oh, is this hang on a sec. I think that one expects a header. It does have the patch expects a header option from the Retron 5. As I said before, I think it's just a duplicate of the Retron 5 firmware with more features and on better hardware. For those of you wondering about death grip on the cartridge slot, I've said it before, it does have a bit of a grip, but I don't know why I typed that. I'm just going to say that. Anyways, yeah, that's Shin Megami Tensei. I'm not going to go too far into this because it's going to take a bit before we actually enter a fight. The death grip is significantly lessened if your cartridges are clean. That's all there is to it. Like, if my cartridge is not clean, it's a fight to get it out of there. If it's, like, I just cleaned it before I put it in the system, then it comes right out just fine. We're going to move on to PC Engine, or TurboGrafx, where Nutopia is. The game I just dumped at the beginning of this video. For those of you who don't know, this is a Zelda clone by Hudson Soft for the PC Engine and TurboGrafx. It has a sequel. Both of them were localized. The sequel is notably better than this one from what I know. I just don't own it because it's more rare and expensive. This game, I believe I got this when I got my TurboGrafx originally. A few years ago, I was in Chicago, and there's a store there called People Play Games that sells all sorts of stuff. They just run entirely off of what they sell used, and they usually have an amazing selection. They're in the middle of a dense city, though. I mean, it would make sense. They probably have a lot of people who are looking for quick money and had amazing childhoods that they don't care about erasing. I mean, shit, last time I was there, they had like Neo Geo MVS cartridges and all sorts of crazy things that people would be charging like $300 for on eBay. And yeah, I mean, it is quite literally a clone of Zelda 1. It's not bad. The first one does have some issues that it suffers from. But it's definitely not a bad game. You could do a lot worse, especially on what we got for TurboGrafx games in the States. Moving on to original Game Boy / Color, we're going to use Pokemon Red here first. And even though I turned it off for my own play, I'm going to turn on Super Game Boy border. This is the one game I've been plugging into the Retro Freak frequently, and that's just because I've wanted to move my save back and forth from my cartridge. But it does the full, like, colorization and border thing that the Super Game Boy does. Which is good because you can't physically... Well, you can't plug in a Super Game Boy into this and expect it to work. That's just not the way it works. And you can take a look at all the exploiting I've been doing. I got a Mew because I use that trainer escape glitch. Look it up, it's actually really funny that that works. And I was using the old man trick to encounter Missing No, because what that does is it adds 128 to the 6th item in your inventory, and I just keep moving things into the place that I need. So, yeah, I won't have to worry about catching anything or money, ever. And just for the sake of showing it off, I hit close instead of back to menu. We're going to turn the Game Boys off, the Game Boy border off, and go back into the game. Because this is a feature I like. Because the border, I'm just not a fan of it. It will still keep the Super Game Boy colorization, even if you turn the border off. Nice little bonus, I like it. And we'll show off a Game Boy Color game as well, just to make it a big deal. Let's just load up Toki Tori for something weird. When Capcom was awesome and they published independent titles. I'd love to show you Shantae, but I don't have $1,000 just lying on the floor that I can throw away on a single Game Boy game. And yeah, everything works quite well. This is a fun little game you can find. You can still get the Game Boy Color version for a pretty fair price nowadays. But it is... I mean, I got mine new for like $12. It is on the Virtual Console on the 3DS for $5. And you just go around and you try to gather all of these eggs. There's also the PC/Wii/3DS version that's essentially an upgraded version of this, from what I know. The game itself is pretty simple and straightforward. And it gives you a nice tutorial stage every time it gives you a new item to use. Another one that I want to cover in the future. We're going to go to Game Boy Advance and load up Klonoa Empire of Dreams here. Just to show off Game Boy Advance games quickly. Obviously, the handheld games don't look amazing after scaling. I imagine you'd use the filter for it. I'm sorry, I'm a bit of a purist. I do like my pixels. Probably because I did a lot of pixel art when I was like 12. I've played this stage so many times. Like, the stage is muscle memory at this point. This is Klonoa Empire of Dreams on the Game Boy Advance. Like I said before, it is a platformer, a puzzle platformer with this crazy, like, lift and throw mechanic. And it's quite a bit of fun. And you can get it pretty cheaply as well. If you've ever been on the weirder side of the internet, you probably recognize the character because he is a furry character, so obviously there is too much Rule 34 on him. And that's it. That was a perfect clear on that stage. Got all the gems and got all the little bits. So, we are going to wrap this up relatively soon. We're going to cover a couple games in the Genesis category. I mentioned in the original video that the official Mark III adapter is kind of rare. Yeah, I have one, so I can show you a Mark III game running on this. I tried one of my Master System adapters in it, and I don't know what it is, but the circuit board's a little too wide, so the cartridge doesn't physically fit. It's really weird. So this is the Mark III version of Outrun. If I can get something going with a Master System adapter, then I'll plug it in and get it working in the future. But right now, if it's going to be weird and do the thing that it did, then I have no clue. Might just need to go in there with a file or something. And then a Genesis game. This is where we get a glimpse into the weird side of my library. This is called Wings of War. I know the sprite artist from the infamous Cho Anarchy, the first one at least, was involved in this game. So if you've seen the original Cho Anarchy, you might see some similarities here. Like Cho Anarchy, it's actually quite good. It's hard, but it's a fun little shoot 'em up. And I love some shoot 'em ups, that's for sure. I mean, I own a few of Cave's JAMA boards. Really, really expensive things to get. But that's what happens when you like something, I guess. Oh, that was a bullet. Also has some crazy graphic effects going on here. Kind of mode 7-ish. Scaling and rotation. Be interesting if this was the one that took off instead of Cho Anarchy, because I think it was a matter between the two, and Cho Anarchy took off because it's just so fucking weird. Okay. But yeah, that's a Genesis game running. Nothing too fancy there. Before we go on to the final piece, I'm going to just quickly show off. You have the built-in file manager. So you can manage things. There is the system menu, which gives you all sorts of options for screenshots. The update process is the same as the Retron 5. You have to write this file to your SD card and then copy it to your computer, upload it to a website to get the update. Again, another reason why I think it's just a duplicate of the Retron 5 firmware. There is a manual. Oh, they fixed that. Okay. In the initial firmware version, the manual is only in Japanese. I've updated this to 1.2 since then, and it looks like they do actually have English in the manual now. So you have a manual built into the system, which isn't bad. And there's the off button there. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do one last thing, because people have been wondering about the adapters that let you play NES games on a Famicom, for putting NES games into the Famicom slot here. I had no doubt that they weren't going... I mean, that was a really terrible sentence, and I just finished an English class. What the hell's wrong with me? I knew they were going to work. Basically, the adapter, all it does is send signals to the right place. It doesn't actually have any components or anything in it that could potentially interfere with the process. So what I'm going to do is I have prepared here an NES game that I know was only released in the United States, plugged into an adapter. Get ready for some shit. This is also one of the larger NES games in existence, which is why it's taken a bit to load. And it doesn't look like it loaded properly. This does happen, unfortunately. I know this came up with the right ID last time, so we just need to give it a minute. And there we go. Yes. It runs Action 52. I'm pretty sure I'm on somebody's hit list because I own this game in the first place.
Make your selection now.
Woo, I'm throwing snowballs. This is so amazing. It only cost me $200 for 52 games. That was the MSRP. It was $200. I mean, oh, yeah, and then there's that. Yeah, I'm not going to expose myself to that any longer because I am still currently sick. Anyways, that is the overall system usage video thing for the Cyber Gadget Retro Freak. At the moment, I still highly recommend the device. If you want one of these modern emulator consoles that do the HD upscaling and do everything through internal software emulation and support all these devices, the Retro Freak is worth the money. My experience with the Retron 5 was it didn't take long before I had problems with the cartridge slots and the wireless controllers. Wireless controllers might have something to do with the massive amount of wireless interference there is in my living room, but still, recommendation all goes to the Retro Freak, especially just for that installation function. I mean, you can just slide the little console out and take it with you to your friend's house with the games installed on it, and you're good to go. So yeah, thanks for watching. More content coming soon.